Okay, let's dive right into this. Today's explainer is a heavy one, but it is absolutely fascinating. We're unpacking a really profound case study, a final assessment report from a counseling course that brilliantly mashes up academic psychology with the raw, visceral reality of human suffering and triumph. We're looking at a deeply personal, incredibly transformative 3-year period that kicked off in 2022 with a severe medical crisis, specifically total kidney failure and a subsequent transplant. But, as we'll see, the physical illness, yeah, that was just the beginning of the battle. The author puts it perfectly, noting that the transplant wasn't just a surgery. It was a psychological rebirth. Because the trauma of the waiting period and the crushing financial burden left some deeply seated scars. And it makes sense, right? A diagnosis of total kidney failure creates what the famous psychologist Viktor Frankl called an existential vacuum. You are directly confronting your own mortality. Imagine the sheer repetitive exhaustion of dialysis. It physically keeps you alive, sure, but it is this relentless, blinking neon sign of your own vulnerability. It can completely shatter your self-concept. Plus, the intense stress of waiting for a donor puts your mind into a permanent state of hypervigilance, constantly scanning for threats and just draining your mental battery.
So, how do you even begin to heal from that? Let's open up the counseling toolkit.
To unpack a multi-layered trauma like this, we need some serious tools. The author of this case study used 3 foundational psychological frameworks to navigate their own recovery. First up is Carl Rogers' person-centered therapy, or PCT. This is a humanistic approach. Rogers basically believed we all have this innate biological drive toward growth. But to actually unlock it, 3 core conditions have to be met by someone supporting you: empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard. The holy grail here is achieving congruence. That's when your real self and your ideal self perfectly align. When you're facing a life-threatening illness, that self-concept fractures completely, causing profound distress. Next in our toolkit, we've got cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This gives us the structural framework to understand how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all tangled together. CBT argues that psychological distress usually comes from irrational or maladaptive cognitive schemas, basically deeply held beliefs that form early in life. In this particular case study, CBT was absolutely crucial for cognitive restructuring. That means hunting down those negative automatic thoughts and swapping them out for balanced, evidence-based perspectives. And finally, we pull from the behavioral school with Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning. You probably know Pavlov for the drooling dogs, but when it comes to human trauma, this theory perfectly explains how our triggers are formed. Think about it. A totally neutral stimulus, like a random sound, gets paired with something biologically potent, like extreme danger. Eventually, that neutral sound all by itself triggers a massive conditioned response of intense fear. It completely explains why the mind stays hypervigilant long after the actual physical threat is gone. Now, what's really interesting is how this all plays out in our next section: support versus betrayal. This brings us to the complex socio-emotional dynamic of the client's crisis. The kidney failure was brutal physically, but the deepest psychological challenge actually came from the people surrounding the client. It is a stark, almost unbelievable contrast. On one side, you had profound professional and emotional support from the client's wife. Being a nursing professional, she offered clinical expertise that really dialed down the fear of the unknown. But more importantly, tying right back to Carl Rogers, she embodied unconditional positive regard. When the client felt biologically broken, her unwavering acceptance provided the psychological safety net needed to survive. On the flip side, the biological family. Parents and siblings who exhibited a total withdrawal of empathy. They detached completely, physically and emotionally, during a life or death crisis. And this familial abandonment introduces something called secondary victimization. The family essentially expected the client's demise, so they just walked away. The very people who are biologically wired to be your primary attachment figures became sources of profound rejection. Dealing with a failing organ is traumatic enough on its own. Having your core family abandon you in your darkest hour, that layers on a level of deep, acute depression and resentment that is hard to even fathom. From a CBT perspective, this ultimate betrayal triggered an incredibly destructive negative core belief for the client. I am only valued as long as I am useful or healthy. Wow, think about how devastating that schema is. The client quickly realized that healing wasn't just about recovering from a kidney transplant. To survive this, they had to completely overhaul their social identity and reevaluate their entire attachment style.
Which naturally leads us to unpacking childhood conditioning.
Because to really understand the sheer weight of this trauma, we have to dig beneath the medical crisis and the family betrayal. We have to look at early childhood. During their recovery, the client noticed they had this intense hypersensitivity to sudden, loud noises, which was severely spiking their anxiety. It wasn't random. It was a textbook case of Pavlovian conditioning. Let's walk through it. Growing up, the client's father had these violent outbursts, literally destroying things around the house. So crashing sounds plus violence equaled the unconditioned stimulus, absolute terror. Fast forward to adulthood. Any sudden loud noise acts as the conditioned stimulus. The physical threat of the father is long gone, sure, but that neural pathway, it is still firing on all cylinders, triggering an immediate conditioned response of intense anxiety.
So the crucial point is, how do we actually fix this? Let's look at interventions in action. Recognizing trauma is only half the battle, right? During this whole ordeal, the client was actually enrolled in a 6-month counseling course, which became an incredible therapeutic sanctuary. Surrounded by instructors and peers who were dedicated to studying the mind, the client finally experienced those core conditions of empathy and congruence that their family had denied them. And in this space, they deployed 3 actionable techniques to heal: cognitive restructuring, systematic desensitization, and catharsis. Let's break down exactly how these were applied. First, using CBT, the client went after that awful core belief about only being valuable when healthy. Through cognitive restructuring, they systematically tore down the resentment toward their biological family. Instead of seeing the abandonment as proof that they were worthless, they reframed it. They realized the abandonment was actually a reflection of the family's own psychological limitations and their inability to handle the fear of loss. That shift in perspective is a total game changer. It completely removes the blame from the victim. Then, to tackle that Pavlovian fear of loud noises, they use systematic desensitization. It's an incredibly effective behavioral technique. By deliberately practicing targeted relaxation techniques, the client literally trained their body to stay physiologically calm even when exposed to those triggering sounds. Over time, this effectively deconditioned that childhood fear response, completely rewiring the old neural pathway tied to their father's rage.
And of course, the healing process desperately needed catharsis. The counseling course gave them a structurally safe, deeply empathetic environment to just speak the unvarnished truth. They processed an immense amount of repressed anger and sorrow about their failing health and their family's betrayal. And highlighting this is so critical, because without that emotional release, unexpressed trauma almost always morphs into chronic physical illness or severe depression.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final section, a psychological rebirth. The journey from 2022 to the end of that counseling course was marked by unspeakable suffering, but also by unparalleled growth. The kidney transplant gave the client a second chance at physical life, for sure, but it was the therapeutic theories that gave them the tools to actually live it. The transformation from victimhood to self-actualization here is staggering. Before all this, the client was in high distress. Congruence was basically in the negatives. Their self-concept was in pieces. But after integrating Rogers, Beck, and Pavlov, they achieved true psychological maturity. Their internal reality now beautifully matches their external actions. They're no longer defined by what their family did, and they emerge with a profound lived empathy for the human condition. Ultimately, the client's goal is to use this very experience to ensure that no one else ever has to face their darkest hour without an empathetic listener. And that leaves us with a really powerful reflection to end on today. Based on everything we've just uncovered about the literally life-saving nature of Carl Rogers' theories, I want you to ask yourself, who in your life relies on your unconditional positive regard during their darkest hour? Will you be the one to step up and provide that psychological safety? Think about it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.